All right, let's go ahead and get started. So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Today, we're going to focus on an update on the HEALEY ALS Platform trial with Dr. Sabrina Paganoni. My name is Tanner Dagdelen. I'm the co-founder of Unite. And for those of you who don't know, we're a health technology company committed to accelerating ALS research by uniting patients, caregivers, data, and researchers all in one place. It's an absolute honor to serve the ALS community. The heroism and generosity of you all is what motivates me and the rest of my team at Unite each and every day to make a difference. And I'm just thrilled to be able to participate and be part of this community and offer events like these. So I have a quick set of housekeeping items to cover before we begin here. First of all, big thank you to Dr. Sabrina Paganoni for joining us. She's going to be presenting for about 40 to 45 minutes about how the HEALEY ALS platform trial has progressed and what we can expect from the trial moving forward. And then after that, we'll have a Q&A. Unlike in previous webinars where you could only ask questions via the Q&A box, this time we're going to have another option, and we're going to open up the event and invite anyone interested to join the main webinar window so you can ask questions directly and connect with and see others in the community. So at any time during the event, just raise your digital hand, and after Dr. Paganoni's presentation, you'll get an invitation to join the main webinar window as a panelist and can turn on your video if you choose. Of course, if you want to stay an attendee, that's totally fine. And if you have a question during the event at all, you can use the Q&A box just like usual, and I'll interject with those questions during the Q&A as well. But if you do decide to join us in the main webinar window and you have a question during the Q&A, just go ahead and unmute yourself, which lets me know that you have a question, and I'll call on you so that you can ask it. Additionally, and the last thing is I and some of my Unite team members will also stay on past the hour to continue the forum so that you can have any additional questions answered, see and speak to each other, and connect with us and others in the community. So with that out of the way, no stranger to heroism, we have today's speaker, Dr. Sabrina Paganoni. Brief introduction. Dr. Paganoni is the co-director of the Neurological Research Institute at Massachusetts General Hospital. She's a physician scientist at the Healey Center for ALS at Mass General and an assistant professor at Harvard Medical School. Dr. Paganoni's research focuses on developing new treatments for ALS. She designed and is currently leading several ALS clinical trials that include novel endpoints and biomarkers and innovative trial designs. She's currently the co-principal investigator of the HEALEY ALS Platform trial, the first platform trial for ALS in the world, which is what we're all talking about today. So Dr. Paganoni, thank you so much for joining us again. And if you're ready, please begin your presentation.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And always great to be here with all of you. You've been too kind in the introduction. I had to say what really, as you said, what motivates us are the people on the line. And I actually recognize a few familiar names among attendees. So thank you so much for, working with us and for all the new people I haven't met yet. Hopefully I will meet you in person soon as well. So today I'm going to provide an update on the HEALEY ALS Platform trial. I was actually looking through my files, and I believe I gave an update about 1 year ago. So definitely happy to be back and especially excited to share the progress. A nice thing about having all these webinars recorded and all the slide decks, etc., is that we can go back and see where we were 1 year ago, which I think is also a great motivation and really helps us really appreciate all the work that went into the trial over the last year. Most importantly, this trial would have not made any progress without the participation from so many people living with ALS and their caregivers. So now I'm going to start by sharing this screen. And I'm going to actually have kind of a 20-slide presentation. Hopefully it won't take me too much of your time, because really I also do want to hear from you and hear what your questions are, what suggestions you have. It's really a pleasure for me to continue to work with a growing group of supporters and people really were coming together to support the HEALEY ALS platform trial, starting from the patients first and foremost. So we do work with a lot of industry partners, academic partners, patient groups. The different logos are on the slide and the number of logos continues to grow. And we do have a lot of patient advisors that contribute to the design of the trial and the conduct of the trial. So if you have any suggestions, any questions, again, feel free to share them today during the webinar or follow up by email later on. I will share my email on the slide. So we always go back to what Sandy told us. I know Sandy is very well known to many of you in the community, and she told us that we really need to work on the ALS clock. We have no time to waste. Certainly, whether there is a pandemic or not, we have to make progress as fast as possible because the ALS clock continues to advance. And so we really need to find solutions to test drugs more efficiently. This is the motivation. This is really the only reason why we started the platform trial, to work on the ALS clock. Now, the good news is that ALS has a large drug pipeline. In fact, ALS is the neuromuscular disease with the largest drug pipeline. So what this means is that there are many companies working in the ALS space, and every time I speak, the number keeps growing. Now based on our own count, we're now well over 200 companies in the ALS space worldwide, which means thousands of investigators, both in companies, but also in academia, working worldwide to identify new targets, new potential compounds. And we know of several investigational products that are essentially ready to go into clinical testing. Now, because we do have this large pipeline, now we are at a unique time to translate all these discoveries, all this science, all the work from all these companies and investigators into new treatments for people with ALS. But we need to test them. We need to test them rapidly. And that's why we started the platform trial. Now, rather than explaining the trial myself, I want to show half of a video that we put together 1 year ago. We launched this video last summer. And I'll let you show it. I'll let you see it. It's only the first half. If you want to see the entire video, please go on our website, and it's there for people to see. So let me just play it, and this explains the basic principle of the platform trial.
In the fight against ALS, the first ever ALS platform trial, designed to accelerate the development of effective and breakthrough treatments for people with ALS. So what's different about the HEALEY ALS platform trial? Instead of testing just one drug, the HEALEY ALS platform trial evaluates multiple treatments at the same time. This means more opportunities to find groundbreaking therapies in a faster time frame. Imagine having to build a new dock every time a different ship came to port with new treatment cargo. This is how traditional trials work. In platform trials, there is one dock to receive all the cargo and connect the treatments to their final destinations.
So this is the platform or the dock that we launched last summer. And last summer, we made the video to explain what we were about to do. And now it's amazing for me to be back 1 year later and show you the result of that work. So first of all, changing the trial design, moving from an individual trial to a platform trial, compared to a traditional trial, we gain efficiencies in terms of time, costs, and exposure to placebo. Based on our own research, we're cutting the development time in half, cutting the costs, and reducing exposure to placebo, which is obviously so important for everyone living with ALS. And really, the vision and opportunity came with the launch of the HEALEY Center. You see Dr. Mary Sukovich, the director of the center here in the picture with Mr. Healy, who basically enabled the launch of this initiative by providing a transformational gift to our hospital. And we wanted to leverage the donation to really change the way drugs are tested in ALS. Specifically, we wanted to make sure that we could test many drugs as rapidly as possible and reduce placebo at the same time. We work with the entire community to launch the trial rapidly and efficiently. So we really worked with industry. We had workshops with them. We worked with the FDA. The FDA has been very supportive of this innovative trial. We worked with many sites and investigators. At this time, we have 54 sites that are actively enrolling. They're spread across the US, and they're all coordinated from a central coordination center, one central IRB, which is the Institutional Review Board that oversees the conduct of the trial, and that's located from where I am. Actually, I'm here in Boston, near MGH, the Massachusetts General Hospital, and that's where we coordinate the study from the Healey Center at the Massachusetts General Hospital. We've been working with all the sites that are part of the NEALS Consortium. It's a large organization of many sites that are experts in ALS trials and research in general. And I had to say the most important thing has been for us to always keep the patient voice at the center of trial design. So people with ALS have directly contributed to the design of the trial, and we meet with patient representatives on a regular basis to continue to add to the trial and expand in new directions in a way that's patient-centered. So really great community effort to launch this trial. The way this works, as the video mentioned, is that we have a shared infrastructure or a central platform, and we have a common protocol, also known as master protocol, that enable these operational and scientific efficiencies, including, more rapid development, less expensive trial and less placebo. From a participant's perspective, if you think about the participant's flow, once somebody decides to enroll in the platform trial, that participant will be assigned to any of the regimens or drugs, different drugs in the trial. So the colors here correspond to a drug. So let's say we're testing drug A, B, and C, for example. At this point, we are actually testing 4, A, B, C, and D at the same time. So rather than testing only one drug, we're testing 4 drugs at the same time. And so when somebody is assigned to a drug, let's say that they are assigned to regimen A or drug A, for example, that they are in the orange regimen. And so they know that potentially they could be receiving that drug, but they don't know if they're receiving active or placebo. That's typically in a placebo-controlled trial where you participate for a certain period of time. That in this case, we kept as short as possible, 6 months. You don't know if you're receiving active or placebo. And then after the placebo-controlled trial, people will be able to get open label extension, get active drug long-term. But what's really important here is that the shared infrastructure and the master protocol allow sharing of placebo data. So what this means is that in every drug A, B, or C, we minimize the number of people who are on placebo. It's only 1/3. I'm sorry, 25%, 1/4. So for 4 people that enter the trial, 3 will be on active and only 1 on placebo. But then the data from the placebo participants are kind of combined, put together in a shared placebo group, and then each drug is compared to a shared placebo group. So that's how we can compare drugs to a large enough placebo group, while minimizing, from a patient perspective, the chances of being on placebo, because all the placebo data is combined and contributes to the analysis. So that's the real change. This is really the backbone, because we're sharing placebo data. We can actually reduce the exposure to placebo, and overall, we also have sample size savings overall and cost savings, because again, we don't need to have as much placebo as we would normally do in a regular trial. And because everything is launched kind of at the same time with a shared infrastructure, we also gain a lot of operational efficiency. Just a couple of words about the protocol. The protocol is the same. It's a common protocol for multiple regimens or multiple drugs. That means that we target the same population. We measure the same endpoints. We have roughly the same sample size, which is about 160 people per drug. The placebo-controlled period is 6 months, but then after that, everyone who completes the trial will have access to active drug as part of a long-term open-label extension. Now, every drug or regimen is then described in what we call a regimen-specific appendix, which is an addendum to the master protocol. Now, this is important operationally, because when you have, what really takes time to start a new trial is to set up a whole new protocol and a whole new infrastructure. In this case, instead, the master protocol remains the same. That's like our house. The house has strong foundations. We spend time designing an optimal protocol and an optimal infrastructure. And now we just addend or add to it, so that every time we have a new drug, we just need to basically kind of like add one chapter to the book. We don't have to rewrite the entire book. We just add one chapter. So each appendix will describe a specific product. So drug A versus drug B or drug C. And the participant will be fully informed about the characteristics of the product that they are exposed to, the route of administration, the safety profile, and if there's any additional assessments that are needed because of the specific characteristics of that product. Now, at this time, the regimens that we are testing are the ones that are color-coded, A, B, C, and D. We're about to launch regimen F, which will be pink, and that's going to be launched by the end of the year. And then we're working on regimen F. So, and I don't know what color that will be, but in any case, we are adding to the platform. And again, the idea here is to continue to add. We have a strong house, strong foundations. Every regimen occupies one floor, so that it's easier to kind of add. And then our guests can continue to come and go, really. And you can come to different floors and then leave. Once we're done with regimen A, the regimen A will exit, and we're going to have more space, more room for new guests. So again, that's the idea, to make the entire process more efficient and faster. So at this time, we launched last year this Perpetual adaptive trial. The name itself, Perpetual and adaptive, tells you that we will continue to grow for a long time, because we want to test as many drugs as possible. We have this shared placebo with a randomization ratio 3:1 in favor of active, and placebo again is minimized. At the end of the placebo-controlled period of the trial, which is about 6 months, people are given the option of open label extension. At this time, we're testing 4 drugs, and there's a leucoplan, verdiperstat, CNM-Au8, and pridopidine. Each drug is made by a different company, and we're all working together with great collaboration so that we can test all these drugs at the same time, in parallel, in different groups of people, but at the same time using the same infrastructure, so that then we can share placebo data. The drugs have different mechanisms of action, and I want to mention that these drugs are for all types of ALS. We're not targeting any specific genotype or any specific mechanism. The drugs were chosen to apply to all forms of ALS. The drugs are chosen by a therapy evaluation committee based on scientific data in the lab, as well as previous human safety data. So we would only put drugs in the platform trial where there is a strong scientific rationale as evaluated by a group of independent scientists. And also we know enough about this drug to be able to incorporate it in a platform that is, a large scale trial. So we need to know data about dosing, safety, target engagement that's been acquired for each of these drugs or for any new drug that's going to be added in the context of either a previous ALS trial or other trials in different diseases. Sometimes the same drug can be tested for more than one disease for good reasons, because many of the mechanisms can be common, and maybe be common between ALS and a different disease. So for each of these drugs, we have knowledge from previous trials, and now we're basically providing the definitive testing in ALS. Now, the trial design was discussed with the FDA so that if we had a strongly positive result, this trial by itself could support the registration of a new drug. Now, this is important because trials can be at different stages. So sometimes we have an early stage trial, mostly to make sure that the drug is safe, for example, or we have a phase 2 trial that's sort of, kind of an intermediate step and sort of, to make a go, no go decision. Here it's different. We're taking drugs at a later stage of development, drugs that have already shown promising results or safe results in previous trials, and now we're taking it to the last step, essentially. So assuming that if any of these drugs are really positive, meaning that we can really show that they are safe and effective for ALS, then we could support the registration of a new drug. And that means that the data quality, the operations of this trial are particularly stringent. We really pay attention to a lot of details. There's very robust data collection, very robust data cleaning and processing and statistical analysis, because all of the data is going to be registration quality, so high quality data that could support a new drug for ALS. Now, in order for people to participate in this trial, they sort of flow through the protocol as indicated by the arrows at the bottom. So let's say if somebody is interested in the trial, what do they do? Well, first they have to provide informed consent. Then they'll be assigned to any of the regimens that are active at that time at that site. Then they will randomize or randomly assign to active or placebo within that regimen. And then after the placebo-controlled trial, they can go into open label extension, which means receiving active drug long-term until we know the results of the trial. In other words, we really wanted to give participants an opportunity to be exposed to active drug if they so choose long-term until we figure out if the drug works or not. So right now we are, we're making great progress, as I told you. So we have, hundreds of people on active drug already who have completed the 6 months of placebo-controlled trial, and basically we give them the option to take the drug if they want to, until we know the results of the trial. Now the target enrollment number or sample size for each regimen is approximately 160 individuals. And then again, of these 160 per regimen, only 40 will be on placebo, and then they're all pooled together. Now, the good news is that as of today, we've made significant progress. As you can see here, we're essentially at target for regimens A, B, and C. We're really waiting on the last couple of participants, and then we will announce formally, hopefully very soon, the official enrollment, the fact that we're meeting enrollment for A, B, and C. And regimen D, which started 6 months later, has really made remarkable progress. As you can see, it's not far behind by that much at all, because initially we launched with A, B, and C at the same time. So 3 drugs were launched at the same time last summer, and they have proceeded in parallel. And then regimen D came on board later, 6 months later, but because the infrastructure was already up and running, it caught up. And now when we're going to launch E very soon, any day now, really, then I assume that the enrollment will also be very efficient because the infrastructure is already available. So we're not reinventing the wheel every time. We're really trying to test as many drugs as possible to have more opportunities to find new drugs for ALS. Now, how do you find the center? Well, at this time, we have 54 sites that are actively enrolling. Please use the link or the QR code, and you can just point the camera of your phone to the QR code. It works even during the webinar or during the recording, and it will bring you directly to the page to find not only the names, not only the map location, but also the contact information of the people who are enrolling near you. Now, 54 sites are actively enrolling, but we understand that there's a lot of interest in this trial. For this reason, we are adding 22 new sites. That's the list. The sites in green are the new ones. They will be activated on a rolling basis. So what happens is that after a site has been selected, and that's true for every trial, they have to go through some administrative steps, including training, contracting, we need to send supplies, etc., to make sure that they can do the trial exactly the same way every other site is doing it. So because of that, different institutions may be, faster or slower. And that sometimes, I have to say, in the context of the pandemic, there's a lot of impact of that because, some sites have been closed for a longer time than others, depending on their location. And so because of that, there might be a backlog. And I know everyone is really working as hard, as fast as possible, really, and as much as possible to really make this happen soon. But those are the sites that are gonna come online very soon. It could be, again, at different times, just because of they're physically located in different regions. And we really wanted to increase both capacity in places where, let's say in cities that are, they have higher population, but also, as you can see, we try to really penetrate more states. We're not in every single state yet, but we're certainly trying to add more states, and a few were added as part of this expansion. Now, if you have any questions, we do have a full-time patient navigation team. Ms. Catherine Small and Alison Bullat are available to take questions by email or phone. And again, they generate all these wonderful QR codes that we all became so familiar with during the pandemic. It's like the same kind of like a restaurant menu. I learned how to use it actually going to restaurants after the pandemic. Basically, you can point your camera and be directly taken to the registration for our webinars or to other relevant pages such as the enrolling sites. Our patient navigators are really a central resource for access and communication. This is again their picture on our website. They developed a number of tools based on feedback and requests from the patient population. So, feel free to send more requests and more suggestions, because we do anything we can to incorporate them on our website. So we have a button where you can self-check your eligibility based on the key inclusion and exclusion criteria. This is just a self-check. Then you will still have to go through formal screening at the site, but that's kind of, that's just to give you an idea whether you're likely to be eligible or not. Many people ask questions about what is research, what are clinical trials, what are the pros and cons of participating in a clinical trial. So they developed a section on that. They also developed a number of sections that they expand. As you click on it, it leads you to more Q&As, and all of these have been informed by your questions. So please check out the website. They did put a lot of effort into this to really try to be responsive to the needs of the community. And for more updates, we host weekly webinars, and I'm really grateful to Unite for hosting me today. And again, we are all working towards the same goal. If there is one thing that's good about the pandemic, is that it increased the number of webinars that are available. So at this point, geography is no longer a barrier. There's a lot of material. It continues to grow. We certainly continue to contribute from that point of view in terms of hosting webinars and recordings of the webinars. And the topics are also informed by your suggestions. Now, I do want to, before I end, I do want to point out to a couple of other opportunities that the platform trial has really facilitated. Now, obviously, the main goal of the platform trial is to develop new drugs by testing them in a formal trial, like I just explained. However, as a companion program to the formal trial, we also launched an EAP. EAP stands for Expanded Access Program. So we now have a formal program that's a companion to the HEALEY ALS Platform trial, because we understand that while the trial is, the direct way of testing drugs and really establishing whether they're safe or effective, not everyone who wants to participate can participate because of either geographic reasons or because of eligibility criteria. So as a companion to the platform trial, in order to provide access to the investigational products that we're testing here, we opened this EAP companion program for people who do not qualify for the actual trial. So that's the first goal of this initiative. And we are working with 3 different investigational products at a few sites that are distributed geographically. And again, the idea is to give access to people who don't qualify for the trial. Now, I want to mention that all of this is funded by donations and philanthropy. So unfortunately, the number of spots available is small for that reason, but we continue to fundraise because we really want to increase the number of sites and increase the number of spots for patients. But again, all of this essentially is based on our fundraising activities. Also, because EAPs, technically speaking, could be started by other people. We are not the only ones with an interest in this space. We want to freely share all our resources so that if other people are interested in developing their own EAP, they'll soon be able to have access to training, advocacy, educational materials so that they can jumpstart their own EAPs without having to reinvent the wheel. Again, we're all for sharing our resources freely. I want to talk about a different point. Now, throughout all of this, throughout the conduct of the platform trial, we're also collecting DNA, biomarkers, and digital outcomes, meaning we use smartphone apps to collect speech and respiratory function. So we're doing that in the platform trial because in addition to testing the drugs, we also want to learn more about ALS. Now, one problem that we have in ALS is that we don't have as many drugs already approved, and so the trial was set up to help approve more drugs. However, we also need to learn more about ALS itself in order to be able to make trials better, in order to identify other opportunities for improvement. And we can only do that by collecting data, sharing the data, and analyzing data from different sources, whether it's DNA, biomarkers, or digital outcomes, smartphone app data, that we will also share with researchers. So I do want to point out that there is an overall overarching scientific goal of the platform trial itself that's in addition to testing the actual drugs. So even if the first 2 or 3 drugs don't work, for example, that would be disappointing, obviously, but we know that in parallel, we're also learning more about biomarkers or other tools that can help us learn more about ALS. Obviously, we also hope to develop new drugs. But I think all of this, I'm sharing this to let you know that there's also scientific goals and really a commitment to share all the data freely with other investigators so that they can also advance their own research. To conclude, it's really great to be back after 1 year. Last year, I spoke about the launch of the trial and the fact that we were hoping to test as many products as possible. And now 1 year later, I'm so excited to let you know that we are expecting the results, not for 1, but for 4 drugs in 2022. And we're launching drug number 5 very soon. So again, the idea is really, once we set this in motion, I think that really we'll be able to launch 2 to 3 new regimens every year, which means more opportunities to find effective treatments in a faster time frame. And as bonus points, we launched the EAP companion, which we know it's so important. It's not the trial itself, but as we were developing the trial, we heard the patient community. They really asked us, sure, the trial is great, but we also want an EAP companion. And they really taught us the importance of that. And that's why we decided to launch it as well. So that's going on in parallel. And then last but not least, there is tremendous interest in novel biomarkers, novel digital endpoints, and other opportunities to learn more about ALS in general. And so we are doing that at the same time as we're testing the drugs. So once again, I'm going to share the website that we have with a lot of information, the full length video that I showed, as well as other helpful information, as well as my email. So I hope this was helpful, and please reach out if you have any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Paganoni. So as I mentioned at the beginning of the event, we're going to try something a little bit different this time and invite anyone who's interested to join us in the main webinar view here to ask questions directly. But you can also ask your questions in the Q&A box, just like previous webinars, and I'll be monitoring it so that I can interject those questions as well. But for anyone who's interested in joining us in the main view here on screen, where you can turn on your video and we can be one community together, go ahead and raise your digital hand now, and then we'll invite you to join us as a panelist. Now, if you join us as a panelist and you have a question you want to ask directly, go ahead and just unmute yourself, which lets me know that you have a question, and then I'll call on you so that you can ask it. But again, if anybody wants to stay as an attendee or just in general wants to use the Q&A box to submit a question, you can do that as well. So with that, if anybody's interested in joining us up here in the main view, go ahead and raise your digital hand, and we'll invite you to be a panelist with us. Okay, in the meantime, while this is, while folks are finding the button, I have a couple of questions for you, Dr. Paganoni, if we can get into it. One question is, what does the outlook look like for, let's say, January, February, March timeframe in terms of the number of trial seats that will be available for patients who are interested in participating? I know we have regimen D that's almost nearing completion. We have some additional regimens that are coming online soon. What can the community expect in terms of the availability of an opportunity to participate in the platform trial?
Great question. So every new regimen will bring about 160 new spots. And the idea is to continue to add regimens on a rolling basis so that we almost refresh the spots available. So that's the idea. So right now we are about to open up essentially 160 spots because we are about to launch regimen E, which will open by the end of the year. And so you were asking about early 2022, that regimen E will be up and running with lots of spots for participants who are interested. There's also obviously other trials. I do want to mention that this is a time where other trials are also being launched in addition to the platform trial. And I do want to say that it's important that many different trials are going on right now because really, this is not a competition of one trial against the other. This is really a community effort to test as many drugs as possible, whether we do them, we test them in the context of the platform trial or in other independent trials.
Great. And we have a question that came in from Q&A. What are some examples of the route of administration of the first 4 drugs?
Yeah, so for the first 4, one was sub-Q, which means a small injection, sub-Q injection, similar to what people with diabetes do when they have to inject insulin, so easy to self-inject, not an IV. And then the other 3 drugs were oral. 2 were pills and 1 was a drink. Now for regimen number 5, that's actually the first time that we're going to have an intravenous drug, meaning that it requires an infusion nurse to administer the drug. So that for that, the drug will be infused at the center for the first few, about 4 infusions, just to make sure that the participant does well with the infusions. And then there's going to be the option for home nursing. So people who want, they can have the home nurse go to their house and infuse the drug at home.
And you mentioned that there are a lot of sites that are coming online soon. What is the best resource for staying up to date on whether or not a site, near a patient in a specific location is online or coming online soon?
Yeah. So our website does list the enrollment status. So when it says, so they're listed on our website at the page that I showed earlier. And then the status enrolling or not is activated. So if it says enrolling, it means they're active. The same information is also available on clinicaltrials.gov, which is the government's website that lists all clinical trials, not just this one. And I do want to mention, so that people are aware, clinicaltrials.gov does have a short delay, because every time an investigator or a company submits data or changes the status, there is a review process on the government's website. So that's why sometimes it takes a couple of weeks for that to be updated. That's why it's not perfectly, the information is not always available in real time there. It's just kind of, that's the way the system works.
Gotcha. And for any individuals who are interested in getting in touch with a particular trial site, you put up a couple of coordinators who are helping make connections to trial sites. Are they the main ones to go to, or is there a specific coordinator at a specific site that they should be contacting?
Right. Every site has one or more coordinators, and the names and the contact information for each site's coordinator is available on our website. So if you use the link I shared previously and the QR code, you can go directly to the list of sites, search by state, and then you'll find whatever site in your state, and then the name and contact information of that coordinator will be there. The patient navigators are that central resource that I shared. That's in addition to your site-specific coordinator. Their role is a little bit different because, really to be able to be booked and scheduled at a specific site, you still need to contact the site coordinator. However, our central patient navigators can help you. For example, if you're having trouble hearing back from a site, or if it's not clear who you should contact, or maybe there's a couple of sites that are nearby, you don't know, who to contact first, etc. Or if you have general questions about the trial, you can always contact the patient navigators for more general questions or to get in touch with the trial.
And Can you talk a little bit more about what the aim or expectation on the actual impact on ALS progression the regimens that are currently being tested have? So, is it are they meant to reverse progression? Are they meant to slow progression, halt progression?
No, that's a great question. Well, the drugs are selected based on promising scientific data in the lab. And so we don't really know the true extent of the effect until we test it in people. As I said earlier, the drugs are chosen if and only if they have solid preclinical data and some previous human experience in terms of safety, target engagement, and dosing. However, we don't really know. We won't know the extent of the impact until we completed the trial. So I think there's a range of options. Obviously, we all hope that the drugs will be extremely effective, but I think that for a complex disease like ALS, we're really looking at a combination of treatments where every treatment brings some added value. So I think that's the direction we're going towards in general in the field, aside from these trials. So I think that anytime that we can make a dent in the disease, that's good news, and hopefully we can combine multiple drugs so that they can have additive effects.
And can you say a little bit more about some of the heterogeneity that we see in the ALS population and how that relates to the different drug regimens? I mean, in popular culture, we've heard about precision medicine and whether or not a specific drug can be targeted to a specific subgroup within the population. Is that sort of work going to happen with the exploratory data that you're collecting to see which drug works better in which population, and then maybe do more targeted trials later on?
Yeah, you're exactly right. So we all want to get to the point of precision medicine where we can really target specific drugs to specific individuals who are more likely to benefit than others. To be honest with you, we're not there yet in ALS in general. So that's why we cannot really do it in the trial itself, because again, we're not there in ALS as a whole, as a field. The one exception would be the genetic treatments that are being tested in other trials. Those are obviously only for people that have specific genetic signatures, because they just don't make sense for people who don't have that. So those will be the ones that are really tailored. But the other drugs, the ones that we talked about today, they're meant to address or target mechanisms that are broadly applicable to ALS. So even somebody who has a genetic form of the disease, that doesn't mean that that's the only thing that's going on that causes ALS in that person. The genetic mutation might be the first trigger, but then what happens is that once the motor neurons are affected because of the genetic mutation, for example, or in people who don't have a genetic mutation for unknown causes, then there is a cascade of events that causes the motor neurons to become even more affected. So it's not like an all or none, you only get one medication or another. Again, it's most likely a combination of treatments, even for people who have a genetic mutation.
And we have a question that came in the chat that we can maybe we can address right now, which is that for somebody who has maybe participated in an open label extension or in the open label extension period of the trial, are they able to still participate in other regimens or future regimens after the open label period concludes? And then does the date of onsite apply from the original inclusion into the trial or the open label period, or is it based on the new application?
Yeah, no, these are all great questions. So let me break this down. So in terms of being able to re-enter the platform, that is a possibility. So essentially, we wanted to give participants as many options as possible. So after somebody completes the double-blind portion of the trial, then that person becomes eligible to enrolling in the open label extension. And so thank you to this person who asked the question and for your participation. Participation in the open label extension is really important because in addition to having access to the drug, we do collect data, as you know, to really be able to learn even more about the safety and efficacy of the drug. So the open label extension is also part of the package that will help potentially approve a new drug for ALS. So again, it's really an integral part of the trial itself. Now, if people don't want to go into the open label extension for whatever reason, because perhaps they don't think the drug is a good fit for them, or because they just want to try a different drug, that's also a possibility. So people can decline the open label extension or try the open label extension for a little bit and then re-enter. You cannot be assigned to the same drug twice. So if somebody finished, let's say, regimen B, as in the case of this person who asked the question, then you would be assigned to any of the other drugs. Now, you still need to qualify, though, for the trial. So with the specific question was the date of onset. Well, the date of onset is the time, it's counting to the time you come back into the trial. It's almost like you come back as a new person in a way, because you are a new participant when you come back and try a different drug. And that, that's why sometimes, unfortunately, some people may not qualify, because maybe they qualified the first time based on time since onset, and they might not qualify 6 months later, for example. That doesn't apply to everyone. I'm just saying, it's possible that people might be eligible again or might not be eligible again. And that's why we also wanted to have the option of the open label extension, so that people, depending on their specific situation, they can decide, are they eligible to re-enter, or should they just consider the open label extension, depending on their specific situation. And the reason for that, I do want to point it out that, we really try to be as flexible and as open and inclusive as possible. But the trial, the main principle of the trial is that the population that participates needs to be the same. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to share the placebo. And so if the placebo cannot be shared, then all the efficiencies that I talked about are no longer true for this trial. And so, unfortunately, that's the one thing that we cannot allow, sort of a shift in the shared placebo, because otherwise we wouldn't be able to gain the speed of development that we talked about today.
And speaking of speed, can you share a little bit more about the relationship between the inclusion and exclusion criteria of the trial and how fast the trial can progress? In other words, why, what benefit does the trial gain by reducing the time since symptom onset, for example? There's obviously a power calculation that goes into that, and maybe you can share a little bit more about that.
No, that's an important question. So first of all, for this trial, as for many other trials, there was a lot of thought and consideration that went into the inclusion-exclusion criteria. In ALS, we are fortunate to have a database called PROACT, where many companies have donated data from previous trials so that new companies or new investigators could model the impact of different elements of their trial, including, for example, inclusion-exclusion criteria on the so-called statistical power. And so I want to talk about that for a second. So in other words, the data since onset or other characteristics of the trial are not chosen sort of randomly, but they are chosen based on extensive statistical simulations that leverage pre-existing trials. So they are informed by evidence acquired in previous trials. And so by having this common database that we continue to grow and expand, we can model the impact of different inclusion-exclusion criteria. What's most important for a trial is to have a very high statistical power. And statistical power means the chances of seeing a positive treatment effect, assuming that there is one. So the last thing you want to do is to design a trial that's not powered adequately, and then you miss the chance of seeing a treatment effect, because basically maybe the treatment effect is there, but you didn't design the trial right, and so you don't see it. And so and that's bad, because then you basically rule out or toss out a drug that would have been positive had the trial been better designed. And so why is that important in ALS? I know these are complex concepts, and believe me, there's a lot of people that are really working on that and trying to continue to find better solutions. And incidentally, we had our biostatistician came on our weekly webinar last week. So the recording is on our website if you want to learn from a real statistician. I'm just trying to, break it down. I'm not a statistician, so I'm just telling you what I understand. But our statistician showed, some numbers and some more sophisticated explanations of this. But basically, what happens is that in ALS, as you know, people can be very different from one another. No two ALS patients are the same. And that's that's important to know and to acknowledge. And so you can never compare, the experience of one person, and cannot assume that the person next door will have the same experience. Now, this creates a problem when you're trying to design trials and trying to maximize the statistical power that's so important. Because in the trial, if you include people that are too different from one another, then you would need a very large trial or a very long trial to find the answers. Because by including people that are very different from one another, let's say somebody whose onset was 6 months ago and somebody whose onset was 5 years ago, these two people are different because their progression is different. And that's, time since onset is one of the criteria, along with other criteria that helps you define the different groups. And so if you were to include people that are very different from one another, then you would introduce variability. And so if people are too different, then you would need to extend the trial, include many more people, or treatment for longer to see an effect. And that would allow everyone to be included, but it would also make the process slower, even slower than it is. And that's why we try to find a balance between, speed of development, but also ability to include as many people as possible. So that's how we make those difficult decisions. And it's all based on mathematical calculations to make sure that we are maximizing access, but also maximizing power, statistical power. Now, that's also one of the reasons why we started the companion program, the expanded access companion program, because no matter how much we try, we will never be able to include everyone in a formal trial. Otherwise, it would be impossible to tell if the drug is effective or not, because people are just too different from one another. But we do want to give options to people who are not included in the trial, and that's why we started the expanded access. And I understand this is not, a perfect system, but I just want to explain the motivations and the work that we're doing to try to make it better.
So just to summarize and make it kind of clear cut, the trade-off is basically between including a wide range of clinical presentations of ALS or how people show up. The trade-off is between that and the speed of the trial, which is a function of how many patients have to be included in the trial before you have results that you can trust.
Correct.
And so you were striking a balance between the speed and of results and including a broader swath of the patient population.
Yeah, and then the goal here is because we're still testing drugs that are applicable to the broader population. If a drug were to be approved, we would certainly support it for approval for everyone. In other words, even if not everyone can participate in the actual trial, the goal here is to make the trial as efficient as possible, so that if a new drug is approved, if a new drug actually works and is approved, then it's available to everyone, not just the people who were originally included in the trial or who had the same characteristics as trial participants.
And one thing that I think is probably on the community's mind is the recent results from the Biogen trial. And there was a lot of talk in the community about endpoints and whether the ALS functional rating scale is a noisy metric or can be improved upon. Can you speak a little bit about what the endpoints of this particular trial are, and maybe what the exploratory data hopes to uncover in terms of developing new endpoints, better endpoints to improve the efficiency of trials in the future?
Yeah. So in this trial, we have a mix of endpoints. The primary endpoint is the one that's supported by the FDA for registration of new drugs. Because again, you need to design a trial that could lead to a drug approval if the trial was positive. And for this reason, we're using the ALS functional rating scale accounting for survival. So that's the sort of regulatory endpoint. So if we were able to meet that and show robust results, then you could approve a new drug. In parallel, we are correlating that with a number of other measures, including neurofilament levels, patient-reported outcomes, the speech apps or other smartphone apps that I briefly alluded to be able to, number one, see if any of these correlates with the ALS-FRSR to support faster development, and then to even identify groups that are more likely to respond. Those are more in the exploratory category. We're really trying to learn more.
And I know we only have a few more minutes here, and if we see some additional questions come in from the audience, we'll try to get to them. But one general question I have for you, given that we have such an active and captive audience here, what can the community do to support the activity of the trial? Obviously participating in the trial is an extremely generous and amazing thing that many persons with ALS are doing now, and many in the community many in this webinar are likely doing as well. But what else? Is there anything else that we can do as a community to help accelerate the trial, to support the trial in general? Is there anything that you want to point us to?
Yeah, I would say that the community is already doing so much. We are really blown away by the generosity of all participants and caregivers who are really participating and giving their time and effort. I think that that's the #1 contribution, continuing to participate and support people who want to participate so that we can make progress as fast as possible. And then I think there is a general sort of, awareness, sharing webinars like this one or other webinars, inviting people to webinars, because we also do want to share accurate information in real time and continue to a constructive community dialogue about important new endpoints, important topics in the biostatistics. Why is that done this way or that way? So there's lots of different ways to contribute, and also again, feel free to send your suggestions.
Amazing. Well, Dr. Paganoni, thank you so much for joining us. I know you're extremely busy, but it's really an honor to have you be on this webinar series, but also to give the community an opportunity to hear straight from you about the HEALEY trial. I know it's been a topic of great interest over the past year and a half since it started. I think at this point we should let you go. But for everyone in the audience, we'll go ahead and invite you, if you're interested, to stay, and you can get any other questions that you may have for us answered, or connect with each other as well. I'll go ahead and invite all of you to join the main webinar session, and you can connect with each other and talk to us as well. But for now, thank you so much, Dr. Paganoni. And
thank you so much.